Welcome to the future of education, finding a new framework for growth, part of the DigiTech Conclave. As the world surges towards a new way of life, the question being asked is what is the education model from now on? Will the traditional education system resume? Will the online classes continue? Or is there a choice that offers the best of both systems? Whether it is a language applications, virtual tutoring, smart classrooms, video conferencing tools, or online learning software, blended learning or hybrid model, there has been a significant surge in their usage. Among all, hybrid learning has gained exponential momentum and is finding favor with the trainers and trainees. To lead the panel discussion, I am joined by guest panelists, Mr. Naveen Mittal, IAS, Commissioner, Collegiate Education and Technical Education from Government of Telangana, Mr. M. Nagarajan, IAS, Director of Higher Education and Chief Executive Officer, Knowledge Consortium of Gujarat from Government of Gujarat, Mr. Sandesh Naik, IAS, Commissioner, College Education and Department of Education from Government of Rajasthan, Professor Bharat Bhaskar, Director, Indian Institute of Management, Raipur, Professor Rajat Munna, Director, Indian Institute of Technology, Bhilai, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Srivastava, National Coordinator, ISTEM, Center for Nano Science and Engineering from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Mr. Venguswamy Ramaswamy, Global Head, TCS, EON, and TCS. Welcome to the panel discussion, sir. My first question to Mr. Naveen Mittal, as part of facilitating a new education framework for growth, which are your major administrative decisions taken in the last 2 years, and what are the status, if you can please?
So education sector is basically, I would say, transforming very, very rapidly, mainly because one of the technological changes which are happening around us and especially accelerated due to the COVID pandemic. And two is also, I would say, a lot of policy changes which are happening. And not just the NEP, but even before NEP, I would say there has been a whole lot of policy changes which have happened, not just at the national level, but also at the state level. Now, to tell you about a few things which we have done in the recent past in the state. One of them is that we have gone in for complete, I would say, reorganization of our courses, not just in our government institutions, but also private institutions throughout the state, giving students much more flexibility in terms of combination of the courses, especially in the degree colleges. And the impact of that has been that, especially in our government colleges, because we actually started it a year before we introduced in the private colleges, there's been a growth of about 7% in our student admissions over last 3 years. And that is, I would say, very, very unprecedented. Earlier, students wanted to come to the government colleges, but they were not having the course which was required for them to succeed in the market. And that was a big put off. But when we rationalize or reorganize our courses, we found that large number of students started coming in. So the reason why I'm talking about this is that multidisciplinary education is something which is a big focus in our NEP 2020. And the way to go forward is to give more and more choices to the students in terms of multiple disciplines which they can do together. For engineering also, now since the AICTE has permitted, we have also introduced minors and specialization. Minors being a horizontal area of study, and specialization means more vertical area of study. For example, artificial intelligence or data science with computer science and engineering. So that has again really helped students to diversify or to deepen their interest areas. The second thing which I want to talk about is lot of input of technology into our education sector, starting right from the admissions time. So we have a platform called DOST, the Degree Online Services Telangana, which is a joint collaboration between the Commissionerate of Higher Education, the universities, and also the Center for Good Governance, which is located in Hyderabad, which is a government-sponsored body and which has an expertise in IT. And this platform, I can tell you, is now so robust that most of our admissions now are taking place by students not moving out of their homes. So, there's Aadhaar-based authentication, or there is a facial ID-based authentication, and the students are able to opt for any course in any college of their choice right from their home. Secondly, our entire evaluation process now has moved online. We call it on-screen digital evaluation process. All our answer scripts, especially in technical education as well as in some of our universities, which is Osmania University, which is the biggest university, and also our Open University, we scan our answer scripts, and then these answer scripts go to the evaluators completely online, and then they can evaluate them from their home. And this has resulted in not just saving time of the faculty, because earlier they used to go to an evaluation camp, leaving the classes, or they had to spend some fixed hours there. Now they can do from anywhere, anytime. And also the accuracy has really improved because there are no totaling mistakes now. And we do have now a very, very rich data, question-wise, how is the performance of the student throughout the state? And, we can compare college to college or teacher to teacher also. And which are the concepts where students are doing well, which are the concepts where students are not doing well. And now we have got about 2 years of data, but I think with every single year, we are getting more and more rich data, which will be, I would say, a really, really a huge asset in terms of understanding how do you teach those concepts better so that the student performance improves. And that does it's an interesting link which can be established between use of technology for evaluation and the pedagogy of it. Another thing which we have done is introduce biometric attendance in all our colleges, government and private colleges, through some innovative method which we used. Of course, during pandemic, students are not coming and we're not able to use, but then pre-pandemic, we found that there's a huge jump in terms of student attendance in the institution. We talk about quality of education, but if students are not coming to the institution, you can imagine what quality are we talking about. So students have to come first. And then we found that biometric attendance was one method by which the students actually come to the campus. Okay. We have also in the process of developing a university management system, which is kind of an integrated system for all the universities of the state. Because, right now, their systems are developed over last, I would say, nearly about 2 decades since the advent of technology on different platforms, on different systems. And they don't talk to each other. They don't have the common database structures. They don't share with each other. So we are developing that. Third thing which I want to talk about, apart from the student choices and the technology part of it, is also our focus on the employability skills. We kind of revamped all our curriculum in the year to 2019 for all our degree colleges in our general universities, and 2018 based on the IICT model in our technical colleges and the technological university. What we have done is that there used to be a lot of skills which we are teaching to the students as extracurricular skills or co-curricular skills outside the main academics of it. And, we find a distinct transformation in the way students learn now, especially those, and we think that we will be reaping a lot of benefits out of this in the time to come. So I'll stop here.
Very interesting. Education is going data-driven like health. Very interesting. Very interesting. Mr. Nagarajan, IAS, welcome to the panel discussions. Your major administrative decisions taken in the last 2 years as part of facilitating a new education framework for growth. If you can explain briefly, please.
Yeah, most of it handling this pandemic has been the challenge of running the services, educational services, as much as possible. And naturally, we have no other recourse than technology. So e-learning was introduced in a very quick time across the state, and we could facilitate more than 110 government colleges and almost 400 grant-in-aid colleges in the higher education side. On the technical education side, most of the colleges had done something already. And we could then combine together and bring across everyone on a single common learning platform where we are having academic licenses for more than 20,000 teachers and almost 18 lakh students. And it was all deployed in a very short time of, say, 45 days, right from the idea stage to actual starting of the classes in last year around this time. we had all started already. That was one of the things. At the same time, we were also faced with the challenges of administrative support to the educational services, management of fees, fees collection in government colleges, the application process, and all that. That has been also been tackled. One of the highlights that we could do was we could use this downtime to focus on certain aspects for the students. That is, Gujarat government has especially a student startup and innovation policy. It has been there for last 4 years. And what we could do was do large scale, massive, knowledge sensitization, awareness, and capacity building program. And we could motivate a lot of students to work on innovation while they were innovate while you isolate. That was one of the challenges we had for floated. And this policy has funded more than 3,500 ideas. It is now running to more than 4,000 now. And so far, this policy has gotten us almost 700 patents, all at this school. It is not just the patents or the ideas that is funded. In the general entrepreneurship, is seen as the growth engine for the country. And if we are able to give that flavor to the student while they are in the college itself, from 17 years to 22 years within an institutional sandbox, supported and mentored by the teachers, hand-holded, and all that, that's actually creates a transformation in the thinking of the student. And that is one of the things that we could achieve. We could also train more than 5,500 faculty in IPR programs, intellectual property creation and protection. We had done actually an 80-hour program along with AICTE, CPAM, and a National Research Development Corporation. And we could do this through all this technology and these platforms only. And now we are seamlessly are able to continue these activities. And with the some of the reopening of colleges now happening, especially in the final year students, and also further schools are also being opened. Similar kind of revolution has been done in the school education sector also. And now this entire education sector is poised for transformative growth. Okay. And all this is aided by technology, of course, and new education policy has been put in place at the right time. And I believe that this is one policy that is far ahead of its time. And also one policy that is not catching up, but setting a goal or benchmark further into the future. And all we, people who are in the implementation and the institutions are scrambling to, live up to that expectation. And all the things that Naveen Mittal sir has mentioned about the allied subjects and specialization, we have also tried some combinations, and we are in that mode of, making it diversified. One unique thing that stands out in Gujarat is that under the new education policy, we have created a confederation of colleges. And what happened was there are 5-6 colleges, all arts college, science college, commerce college, all acting separately with separate head of the institutions, all nearby in the almost vicinity, everyone having separate infrastructure for library or ground, or, there is too much of duplication within a very small space. Now it has all been combined, and we have brought it into a single administrative and academic structure with a common curriculum. Though it is still a confederation of colleges, still they are affiliated to universities. They are, able to act somewhere in between a college and an university, something, nearly to the autonomous status. I think that's one of the innovations that policy innovation that new education policy has provided at, and we are very bullish that this is going to be one good model that will help us in actually delivering better services to the students.
Thank you, Mr. Nagarajan. Over to Mr. Sandesh Naik, IAS. Welcome to the panel discussion. Can I have details? Which are your major administrative decisions taken in the last 2 years as part of facilitating a new education framework for growth?
Last 2 years, the government of Rajasthan has created, 133 colleges with in the different areas. Earlier, we had the colleges only at the district headquarters, or maybe in places like in a big town, which can be considerably called as in the Nagarpalika areas. Recently, in the last 3 years, we started opening the colleges, and then the focus was initially the teaching methods that we used to have is annual mode of examination, annual mode of teaching. So later in the adopting to the new education policy, we have started initiating choice-based credit system, and we introduced massive open online courses for our students, and online and the digital mode learning also we have promoted. In the this COVID pandemic actually provided that jolt which we are expecting to modernize our education system. The way in which we used to teach the students, and we had in fact in many in the northern states, we may be facing the problem of dearth of the student lecturers. So we have come up with a concept of Vidya Sambalan, where we can hire the guest faculties not only from the in the education background, but who is already in the administrative field, or in terms of the private sector. He can teach our students. The Vidya Sambalan scheme also bridging the gap of availability of teachers even in the remote areas. In the colleges, we used to face that problem where the lecturers usually were not available in the remote places. So this has actually helped our system. And then the problem of this online education, or the mode in which we are supposed to teach in this COVID-19 actually wanted a change in the mental setup of our lecturers. So we came up with a program called Ganga, where we started training our faculties. The faculties were oriented. More than 2,000 lecturers were trained on how to use the online platform. And in fact, it is online and offline platforms. Though the teaching is same, but the method, the mode, and the way in which we deliver our lectures should be in a different way. So the massive training we have training helped our lecturers to impart the education and to engage the students digitally. So this also helped us to create our own e-content bank, which we shared with our students, which we call as Rajiv Gandhi e-content bank, where they can access the e-learning materials whenever they want, and also provided them the required notes. And these courses are usually oriented towards the skill learning. They had courses on the naturalist course, computer skills, English and communication skills, and crafts and arts and crafts design, which is very popular in Rajasthan. So these courses delivered in Hindi, and we had tied up with IIIT Kota here, and they have come up with massive open online courses where we'll slowly move into the credit-based, choice-based system. They would acquire their skills. The students actually they like these credit courses, and I must say that these online courses, the open distance learning courses, are more popular now because they get a vast choices through which they can select. Mithil sir was telling they have changed their the availability of the choices. So choices can be enhanced by having a digital platform, having an online content, kind of MOOC courses, or the Swayam portal, or the Coursera kind of a thing. But we don't actually formalize in normal college education. We don't formalize these kind of courses where we can allow them to choose among the basket of choices, so that the students can select in a number of choices. Choices can be enhanced by bringing the online courses.
Yes.
Courses which have come up, and which is I'll share the link also, has actually helped our students to choose the different skill setups, skill courses. And I must say that this COVID-19 actually helped us to modernize our system, and hope in future we'll be able to rightly change our system, so that not only we focus only one high profile exam, that is one annual system or semester system, where teaching is more like a student and lecturers, or student and teacher both involved, and it is a learning kind of an experience based learning system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sandesh. So over to Mr. Professor Bharat Bhaskar. Welcome to the panel discussion. What is the latest happening with your institute, sir?
Few things begin to happen with the COVID first wave itself. And they have continued to happen in the same pace. One of the things is the digitalization of the education, or getting into online education mode, has done is created a level playing field for us. When I say, if you look at IIMs, there are different age groups amongst the IIMs. Older ones were very well established, while the younger ones were still having the infrastructure issues, the location issues, and variety of other issues. Now, with us moving into online era, the location issues, the geographical issues, etc., have disappeared. So what new things we have done, apart from not traditional thing, but the compulsory things which we had to do, run the normal our MBA program and PhD program, all those in online mode, all the classes in online mode. What we ended up doing is that we adopted to e-learning platforms, e-learning as a mode of education. And we focused that it's time we need to create a huge manpower pool or human resource pool in the country for the management itself. The overall capacity of all IIMs and top management schools is very limited, doesn't meet the real demand of the industry. Also, there are people who are not in position to come to the school full-time basis because of a variety of reasons, economic reasons, family reasons, etc., and so on. So we decided to launch few kind of programs. One, online e-learning programs, which we offered. I put them in the category of capacity building and capability enhancement programs. You're already in some kind of engineering / heading the department or a managerial, semi-managerial role, but you'd like to become a full-fledged manager, have the complete capability in that category. For that, we launched the general management program, which is a capsule program of about 1/4 of the things which we offer in our normal MBA program, assuming that they already are exposed to the industry. They already understand the business environment. So we don't need to start from the scratch trying to explain them what the organization is all about, etc., and so on. So we can give them a crash course and give them a general management program certificate where they are capable of, are armed with this new capability. They can perform in that environment. Other is that there are many people who are these roles or other managerial roles, but because of the new technology coming in, new techniques coming in, new management techniques coming in, new financial management standards coming in, had to enhance their capabilities. So for them, we also offer capsule modules, normally spread over 3 months period and so on, called certificate programs, where one of our very popular program, for example, is a digital marketing and social media management program. For example, today, all companies were transforming. As they're transforming, doing the digital transformation themselves, they needed marketing people to be ready with the digital marketing capabilities, etc., and so on. So this is our one aspect of executive education, which has really taken off and doing the wonderful job. So these are the few new adaptations which we did from our experience we had learned in doing the MBA program, which is also running online as of now. So we said, why not go ahead and for the experienced people who have missed the boat of CAT or MBA through CAT, they can also come on board and be able to join the bandwagon of and acquire the degree and acquire all the capabilities required for the future job. So that is the essence of major changes which we have done. Apart from, as I said, adopting to the technology, adopting to the online evaluation methods, adopting to the adaptive learning that classroom has a heterogeneity. So can we create the sessions and tutorial rooms, etc., where adaptive level of learning can happen, etc., and so on. So we've done many of those things as well. But I would say the new initiatives which we have taken forward in this period are the one which I highlighted just now.
Thank you, Professor Bharat Bhaskar. Over to Professor Rajat Mona. Welcome to the panel discussion. What is the latest at the Indian Institute for Technology, Bhilai?
Thank you, Radhakrishna. I think I was very interested in hearing what states have done. Telangana, Gujarat, as well as Rajasthan, they have done some very extraordinary things in adoption of technology.
Yes.
From institutes like IIM and IIT, it was expected to be the torchbearers of technology. And we actually, the very first day when COVID thing actually started happening and all that, I remember the first lockdown was started in the 4th week of March 2020. Our students were actually on a mid-semester break, and we were the first institute who actually wrote to them saying they stay put wherever they are. And we immediately switched over to online education as if nothing has happened. Now, that was a very remarkable thing. Our first batch graduated exactly in time. There was no problem at all. Subsequently, our second batch graduated in time and all that. So how did we achieve this? I think we actually looked at two basic guiding principles for ourselves. One, education is all about giving knowledge and acquisition of knowledge. Almost all examination systems actually evaluate the person on his ability to solve problems. I'm not saying this is the bad method or a good method. Probably under the circumstances, that is the best alternative available. But we don't really focus on knowledge gathering ability of the student. I think this was our basic guiding principle, that education is about knowledge acquisition, and that was one. The second thing that we actually immediately kind of embrace, saying offline versus online is a means to carry this knowledge. And the third thing, that labs cannot be held in online mode. They have to be done in offline because the students will not have access to the instruments. Unlike many other fields or many other era of education, technical education is highly dependent on laboratory facilities, and such laboratory facilities could not be operated offline, cannot be operated online. And therefore, these were the three guiding principles for us to define the future course of action. Immediately, the future course of action that we charted out was that mostly labs for that final year student were over. Our aim was to actually have those final year students graduate in time, and therefore this was a less of the problem. We continued with online education. They all graduated actually 5 days before the scheduled calendar date. They actually graduated 5 years prior to that because we actually ran their classes on their demand. We actually ran their classes 6 days a week instead of 5 days a week. Okay. And it actually kind of helped both of us to actually get rid of, the pressure that were coming in because of online education. We actually got rid of those pressures earlier.
Okay.
We, of course, use offline versus online only as a mechanism. We actually devise our own methods of examination. Our method of examination were not on the basis of monitoring the student, because we knew whatever amount of mechanism we do, we cannot monitor. Instead, we switched over to examine and evaluating the knowledge acquisition. This could be done through Viva Voice. Of course, it takes a lot of bandwidth from the instructor side. It could be done by group discussions. It could be done in multiple different ways, and we adopted all such techniques. We even adopted numerical solution problem thing, wherein we'll give an element of surprise, which is valid only for a few minutes. We ask the students to write the answers on a piece of paper, take photograph, and submit the answer to us using WhatsApp. We did not go for any fancy technology. Just simple WhatsApp mechanism actually worked very well. And many of our faculty members are still continuing with this. Since our students come from various different places, it was actually not possible for them to copy them around. The time window was not enough. So we have actually had a lot of learning of new system that we've kept in place. And things actually happened as if online media is only a mechanism for imparting education.
Thank you, Professor Rajat Munna. Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Srivastava, welcome to panel discussion. What is the latest with the iSTEM, sir? Congratulations, Honorable Prime Minister launched it in January this year. And can you just give us some highlight on latest with iSTEM?
Yes. Thank you first to all the panelists. Also, I am hearing everyone and they are talking about the education system, but I will concentrate on R&D, what is going on in our country, research and development, and I understood the pain of researchers, what they have. So this iSTEM portal, Indian Science, Technology, Engineering Facility Map, was launched last year, just before the pandemic started. It was in January 3rd, 2020. And after that, in February 20, Empowered Technology Group was formed by the cabinet. And in that one, a concept came why we should not have a digital catalog in the country, what is developed in last 5 years. And I want to tell you that task was given to me so that we can make this digital catalog as a part of iSTEM, and we started working. And suddenly pandemic came. And I found that many people started facing problem in going to their lab, even accessing any lab facility, what Professor was mentioning just now. And people started facing pain, even using their software-related modeling, simulation, and all kind of issues. Because in their home, they cannot use those kind of software. It is only available within the campus, kind of things. So we came up with many changes. We started digital catalog. We started even city knowledge innovation cluster to get those people and regional problem to solve kind of things. We started those things. And we found in digital catalog in 15-20 days, we found around 700 technology listed, which was done in last 5 years. And all those technology are very much useful. And I found a call one day from MHRD, now MOE. Do we have any such kind of technology which can be used for online teaching, online kind of education? And we gave the access, and they got very helpful technology, many technology they are using in current system. So I want to mention here that this kind of platform is very much important. And during the COVID, even we have learned how to save the fund also. Even, after COVID, we are having problem of funding. And that is very much important currently when we talk about the R&D. So what we thought, if the people will talk about the sharing of resources among each other, and they will avoid getting fund for importing R&D equipment. So those kind of saving will really save our country, and we can optimize the resources usage. And it's a really good accountability among the system. So I can tell you, when the portal was launched, that time we were having 3,000 equipment listed in that. And within 6 months, we have currently more than, at this stage, we have more than 20,000 equipment listed in the portal. And that time only 200 institutions were registered, but currently we have 1,000 institutions came forward and they have shared their facility. So they are thinking, if we can share, we can earn the money by sharing those things. We can also learn many things through online, and many things have come online.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. Over to Mr. Venguswamy Ramaswamy, Global Head, TCS, ION TCS company. Sir, welcome to the panel discussion. So my first question to you is, what role can edutech companies play in ensuring equitable use of technology and bridging digital divide, what highlighted during the pandemic? If you can please, sir.
First of all, if you reflect back on the last 16 months or so, there are some very interesting and important events that has happened. NEP is gaining strength, giving a very strong policy framework. Technology is deep-rooted, opening up new possibilities for the education sector itself. Huge amount of money from PE investments for these edtech companies. You hear every company becoming a unicorn in these days that we see. And also lots of constraints that this pandemic has imposed on the sector itself has created a completely different opportunity for a large number of edtech companies. But specifically on the equity side, on one of the most important things that we have to understand in this country, awareness of adopting technology has been low for a very long time. But things have dramatically changed in the last 16 months. because there was no other option available. Both for the educationists as well as the learners, they adopted it. They came to know about how to adjust themselves at a dramatic pace. This is one thing that has happened. The second thing, which I believe is still a big challenge, is the accessibility to these technologies in a uniform fashion across the country. Many a times, some of us living in Bombay get disconnected during the day due to internet disruptions. Think about from the prime city, if somebody travels 100 kilometers to the nearby villages, access becomes a huge challenge, right? And the third one is the affordability to some of these technologies has been a big challenge as well. I believe lots of EdTech companies, we from TCS as well, has been focusing on how do you make it equitable for learners and the educators across the country to participate in this change, in this opportunity in a very, very large way. One of the things that we can talk about as an example is access to assessments, even in locations where there is no access to internet. This is something that we have been working on in the recent past. How do you ensure some boy or a girl who can take the assessment in a fair and free fashion from a village that has got no stable connectivity throughout the day? How do you do that? What kind of capabilities, what kind of technologies can be used in order to achieve that, to make sure they have access to stable devices, to make sure that they have access to connectivity for a brief period of time, but not really stable. These are things that EdTech companies are thinking today, and some of us have already launched it into the market. Ability to do remote assessments. I think Mr. Naveen Mittal talked about evaluation, leveraging technologies so that the professors and teachers don't have to go out of their home to do the evaluation. That is gaining mainstream as we talk. Big change, bringing ecosystem to teach. And again, Professor Rajat Muna knows this well, not just the academic community teaching the students, but bringing the industry to teach the students, along with the academic professors, building an ecosystem of people to teach has been a big change. I think these changes will drive the awareness more, the accessibility more, and hence the adoption more in the coming months as we see it.
Thank you, Mr. Vengaswamy and Ramaswamy. Sir, over to Mr. Naveen Mittal. Before my second and final question, I just want to know, sir, when you evaluated the answer sheets, which you scanned it is only for internal consumption, or will you share with the particular student? Is he allowed to access?
Yeah, we do share it on demand, basically. I mean, got the point what you are asking. So yes, they're not like completely open as of now, but they are shared on demand because and the students can ask for it and it is provided online to them.
Okay, so my second and last question. There is a feeling that Indian education system and the job market, these two, have been suffering from a lack of synchronization for a long time now. The hybrid model of education and training prepares the trainees to be self-disciplined and self-dependent, and qualities that have real-world applications and aid better prospects for professional growth. What is your opinion from the experience you have gained in the last 1 year, how it should be?
You are right that there has been a big disconnect for many, many years, but I would say that this is getting rectified to a great extent in the recent past. For example, in the technical education, now the new curriculum which has been prescribed, or the model curriculum which has been prescribed by AICTE, does have a lot of practical component. And there's been a shift from theory to more of practical, which I would say is really, really helpful in preparing students for the industry. Parallelly, there are also a lot of things which have now gotten built in. For example, a compulsory internship has got added into the engineering education. I was talking about the employability skills which were on the periphery or extracurricular component of education now became the core, and the credit-based topics which prepare the students for employability outside. So that is done. I would also talk about an interesting thing which we have done in our Polytechnic, which is actually a modification of the dual apprenticeship model of Austria. You know, Austria and Germany, they credit their success to the apprenticeship model which they have, and they have something called a dual apprenticeship model. So we have a company which is there in Hyderabad, which is actually headquartered in Austria, which is called Alpla. And last year, we started discussion about a year and a half back as to how do you adapt the dual apprenticeship model of Austria into an Indian condition. And then we sat down and worked together. We have done this for our diploma program, a special MOU which we signed between our department and CIA, which held the process, and the company, wherein the entire final year, the students actually spend in the industry. And their academic component is broken into two parts. The industry organizes coaching for those components, and the students then come to the Polytechnic to take their exams. And it is divided into two components. And actually, right now, the final year is one semester in the institution and one semester in the industry, but we have allowed them to go completely to the industry for a basic training program there. And then their academic part is divided into two parts to make it like a little more less burdensome. And then we are following it with another 1 year advanced training post the diploma which they get in engineering, wherein they get a stipend, and that is also counted for the apprenticeship under the Apprenticeship Act as an apprentice trainee. And after that, the industry has promised them a job which is much, much more than what these students are able to get in the market. And looking at the success of this model, I visited the students. There was a little, almost a total transformation in them. No, diploma students, they come from, I would say, very, very marginal backgrounds. And the kind of transformation we saw was so good that now a lot of other industries are now coming forward to adapt this program. Another thing which we keep telling, in fact, we were talking this today morning also in our interaction with the admission committee for engineering, was to prepone the placement timing for the students. I don't know, maybe if it can be towards the beginning of the 7th semester in engineering, or even towards the end of the 6th semester. The final semester, final 1 or 2 semesters can be dedicated actually to a customized program which the students will be having for the job which they are going to take up. And that can be counted for internship or project work or whatever terminology which the institutions take up. And I think that can be a big step forward if more and more institutions take it up.
Over to Mr. Nagarajan. What is your opinion, sir, from the experience you have gained in the last 1 year regarding the education system and job market non-synchronization?
I'll start with one anecdote that I used to, listen to when I was a young boy. We used to hear that in Japan, even a 10th standard pass student could assemble a radio transistor. Interestingly, wherever I have lived in 4 or 5 states, and wherever I talk about this, everyone agrees, yeah, we used to hear like that. And there is no research or anybody, some studies saying that this is the truth. But bringing that anecdote 30 years now into the current situation, what is the image that we want to set for our youth? For a 10th class pass or a 12th class pass, what is the minimum achievement skill level that we can guarantee across the country? That will set the impression and the image and the vision for the youth. And I think that is where we are all moving. So this, when we talk about the industry gap, industry and the academia gap, both parties have now realized we need each other. Previously, what used to happen is there is one education sector and there is one industry. Sometimes, incidentally, some placement fair happens, some campus placement happens. So these kind of small activities happen. Now, the challenge of the change in technology and also the high requirement of qualified manpower has led the industry to come and search into the institutions in a more systematic way, rather than just trusting the institutions to provide, very few selected candidates. Now, everyone wants to do campus placement. It's not just only big corporates or big companies, even a local company would prefer to recruit a local, engineering graduates or any other sort of, even non-science graduates, non-engineering graduates are also getting good opportunity these days. Now every firm is looking to hire directly from the college or the institution. So this gap has now narrowed down because both have realized the importance of working together. Now industries are more open to internships. Industries are more open to having somebody outside being an understudy without being a load on the organization, and allowing their people to mentor or support these people to give an opportunity to develop some skills, and probably hope that some of them they could hire the best ones or the nice ones they could hire. That realization has happened. One more trend that has increased the industry academia interaction is the startups. Especially we have seen where in the student startups, when we write to the Chamber of Commerce or the associations or the management association or the industry, local industrial estate associations, the entrepreneurs are more than willing to come and work with the young startups. And many times we have seen that the local problems, these local students are more able to relate to, and local solutions are being born. So in that sense, the startup or student startup is not typically the startup that we are reading on the websites and the news, but the startups that are actually solving the real problems of the local industry, and they are able to relate to that. I think that's a very good trend that is happening, and this blended mode and the hybrid mode. So there is a difference. There is a slight nuance difference where now when we are going out about phased reopening, 50% of the class will odd and even system is also suggested in some places. So half the students will come on one day, rest of the half will come on another day, and the other half could join online. So this kind of infrastructure creation is also a challenge. So now all these different acceptance of pedagogical techniques and methodologies has given rise to more interaction of the industry and the institutions, which is benefiting the students overall. I think that's the positive trend that is happening.
Thank you, Mr. Nagarajan. Over to Mr. Sandesh Naik. Sir, what is your opinion from the experience you have gained in the last 1 year regarding the education system and job market non-synchronization?
Non-synchronization do exist, and not only in the industry and not only industry and the college, industry and academia, but even when when the government recruits a junior assistant or a senior assistant, we also find a similar kind of skill set which is lacking among the youth. And the second is we are not coming as a finishing schools. Finishing schools means what we want. And like say I am an engineering graduate, and it's like almost 15 years. I still feel I asked somebody passed out from the engineering college what they are still learning, and still they're teaching at the college, and it's almost syllabuses are same. I mean, it's not modernized at all. So there is a gap, of course. And the thing which I told earlier of bringing the credit-based system, giving a pool of bucket of many things which the students can take. For example, in the MOOC courses, massive open online courses, which we designed from our from the forest officials. Like say Rajasthan, every district, every 33 districts here have some national parks or a bird sanctuary, and the students or any adult over there can come up as a natural guide or a tourist guide with a proper training. So we have come up with a program called as a naturalist and wildlife expert course, where our forest officials, DFOs or the senior officials, they have shared their experience. They not only talked about flora and fauna, but also animal conflicts, wildlife conflicts, and also about the problems which are faced by the tourists and also faced by these wildlife animals. These things will help the nature guides to enhance the experience of the tourists, and thereby they can earn money by properly capturing the tourist. in a way, what we see is that some guy who is very good at understanding these these things, he himself excels as a very good natural gas, and ultimately he has a good market, he has a good business. So we want to bring these experiences among the youths. So we have to come up with a course, or we have to provide a choice to our students to enhance their skills locally. For example, in Jaipur, a textile market is very famous. Anybody like you, whichever the brand you say, Bunai brand or a Biba brand or any brand of these hand printed dresses, kurtis, saris, they are very famous. We don't know how to enhance those skills among our youths. We don't know how to I'm not talking about a big company, Oracle coming up here and recruiting people, but what is available here we should enhance. These things are actually lacking, and I'm trying, we are trying, and somehow we need to inculcate this in our system. We had come up with a program called Anandam, where we thought of bringing this community, community sharing, community development, where the students, they contribute to the community, but COVID-19 actually not allowed us to do that community services. But somehow these problems exist. But even if we are able to teach our students basic things, we will be able to catch up with many of the advanced countries, in bridging the gap of what is required and what needs to be taught. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sandesh Naik. Over to Mr. Bharat Bhaskar. Of course, IIMs have the distinction of being one of the best placement institutions. Do you see any challenges? What is your opinion from your experience?
I think, as you already mentioned, that we are here to create the people for industry. So synchronization with the industry demand is a very important component of us. And that's why we have structured our courses. In the first year, when the students come in, they basically get the principles of management, basic overall framework of the management courses, etc., and so on. And then we immediately send them back to industry for a 2 months period, where they actually carry out the projects in the industry, learn on the job, also apply the knowledge which they've acquired, and also find out the faults or the gaps they have in their knowledge, in order to pursue the same kind of a job. If they're interested in the same field, etc., and so on, they figure it out what kind of courses or what kind of a knowledge is going to be required or needs to be acquired by them. Second year, that's why it's made of all elective courses in variety of areas. Many of these electives are offered by the industry people themselves. So we invite many, not only all courses electives offered by the internal faculty, also have 30 to 40% component from the industry, but some of the electives have 100% component from the industry itself. So students then pick and choose in a cafeteria model what is that they were interested in, what kind of courses, knowledge gap they found, which courses can fill that knowledge gap. And thus our synchronization, because of this flexible model, our second year means half the program being completely elective model, remains in sync with the industry. As the industry changes, our elective change, our system is so flexible that every year, almost at a notice of almost 3 to 6 months, we can offer new variety of courses or all variety of courses in our elective module. It is the permanent component of first year which remains little stable. The other part is very dynamic and ready to cater to the need of industry. So ours is a made for industry or in sync with industry model. And that's why we continue to serve the industry. Our students immediately find the job and are able to work from day one and give output from the day one to the industry.
Thank you, Professor Bharat. Over to Professor Rajat Munna. I'm sure, IITs are much strong aligned with the industry always. Your experience and your opinion, brief.
Thank you very much, Radhakrishna. I think, see, our if you look at the placement in almost all IITs, in last 1 decade, it has basically become computers or automation skill oriented, skill centric, whether it is in IT industry or any other industry. There is a huge requirement of computing skills and all that. And IITs in this entire last decade actually were synchronizing with that demand and successfully synchronized with that demand. If at all during this pandemic period, that demand became even more aggressive because of work from home and such kind of scenarios. In fact, many of our students who got placed, the placements were actually very healthy for us. And all those students who got placed, they actually have not gone to the industry. The industrial model itself is changing. There is much more acceptance today now for work from home. And many of these students actually don't even get to know their co-workers and all that in physical form. They know them only in electronic avatars. And this is the next normal or new normal that is actually has already been set in. Probably it will swing back a little bit towards offline plus online mode. But I think when I talk to my industrial friends, they all actually are very, very pleased with the new normal that has got set in, because it actually saves the cost of the industry operations. It actually saves the problems, various kinds of problems, and it can actually run in smaller offices and yet provide much better outputs and more efficiency. So I think in time to come, probably we are equally well poised for job synchronization. And I think we actually were moving in that direction anyway. For us, it got accelerated. The embracement of technology in the society happened at a rate which was unprecedented till now. And I think this has kind of made our life easier and gave a very big catapult to adoption of technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Over to Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Srivastava. Your final word, sir. How iSTEM will align with the education institutions? Do you have such plans? Is it ongoing initiative?
Yes. So iSTEM has just entered in second phase last week only for next 5 years. And what we are going to start with that, we are going to find the companies or educational research scholars or whoever is trying to do some kind of research and development of indigenous equipment, and that will really create good job opportunities. We are also going to start with many skill development training, because we know when we talk about the employment or any job opportunity, earlier we were thinking only about the government jobs, and nowadays a lot of startups are coming in the market, but they don't have such kind of skill developed people, manpower, and they are really feeling the issue from where we should get. So we are thinking that if that kind of training, skill development training, indigenous development of equipment, waste to wealth kind of training. So we are coming with new plan also. We are going to contact various institutions. If the old equipment, what you are going to have, you are going generally write up. If you can make some kind of store and you can employ the people who are from ITI diploma kind of people, and you can put them on duty to just open those equipment, learn how it is built, so that they can become a tool engineer for our country. And you know, the lot of problem we are facing in maintaining those equipment, what we are getting from public funded facility or taxpayer money. So that kind of problem will be reduced. And of course, the job opportunity for the lower level up to the higher level will surely increase with that kind of arrangement. So we are going to focus on those things in next phase.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Srivastava. Over to Mr. Venguswamy Ramaswamy. What are some of major roadblocks you foresee in Indian education digital transformation journey, and any assessment evolvements, and your concluding remarks on the national education policy and the digital infrastructure to transform?
In terms of evolution in this space, there are so many that are happening. As we spoke earlier, we believe there will be a stage of learning without learning that will evolve a lot. Students will not be necessarily going through the traditional learning process to learn, the learning will happen in a 360-degree form. It's already happening in many ways. IITs, IIMs, they all do that in various different ways, but there will be an acceleration. We also believe that some of the technologies like AR, VR will change an ability to immersively learn in a very, very large fashion. That's happening. But again, this will get accelerated as we see it. And again, Professor Rajat Muna talked about labs. We believe that there will be lots of simulation of labs that will happen to a large extent. It will happen in an offline mode where the candidates will be able to demonstrate and learn from that itself, right? We also believe that ecosystem-driven learning will take center stage in the years to come. Again, lots of panelists talked about bridging the gap between the industry and the academia. We believe that this gap will narrow because in all the stages of learning, right from student deciding what to learn, industry will participate in telling what kind of career options available for him. Next to how to learn, multiple pedagogical structures will evolve because of industry involvement. Learning something in 4 hours to doing it as a diploma to doing it as a degree program. All these things will evolve because of a strong integration of industry on how to learn. We also believe that industry will change the way the candidates are being assessed. It's no longer going to be simple multiple choice or essay-based evaluation. There are lots of changes that are coming because the industry is trying to see, show me rather than tell me. So that's going to driven lots of changes in that space. We also believe that cognitive skills capability assessment will dramatically change because that's going to drive the 21st century skills that the industries are looking for in students. And finally, the ability for linking the jobs very closely with the academic outcome will be a significant change that you will see. To your question on NEP, as I mentioned earlier, it's too good, but execution is going to be a biggest challenge for all of the educationists and the technology teams that are involving in this, and we will see how it evolves over a period of time. On the assessment side, we believe auto evaluations will, lots of research both in the Western world and as well as in the Eastern world is going on in terms of non-intrusive evaluations, which will enable assessments to be done and the results to be announced almost immediately. There are lots of research and technology that is going on there. We also believe remote assessments will go mainstream. Lots of students are, in a sense, involved in significant amount of malpractices in remote assessments today, significant amount of evolution that we will see. But overall, I believe technology, NEP, constraints in a pandemic world, private equity investments, technology evolutions will show a lot more cohesive relationship between industry, the learners, and the educators and the government in a big way in the months to come, as I see it from current point of view.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vengaswamy Ramaswamy. With this, on behalf of ET government, I sincerely thank you one and all for joining the panel discussion and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you very much, administrators, academicians, and entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.